Wendy Harris is known as the Chief Conversation Officer. Her business is all about helping people with LinkedIn, and she also runs LinkedIn Local networking events. Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today, Wendy.
Oh, Liz, I'm so excited to be here to have this conversation with you.
Wonderful. Now, you're the perfect guest for this podcast because you're all about networking, aren't you? And you've been running your business for over 20 years. But tell me, what's your background, Wendy? What have you done in the past?
So before running my business, I was in telecoms and IT, predominantly running call centres, sort of outbound telemarketing, recruiting, training, managing, hitting targets, all of the above. And I thoroughly enjoyed that, and until I think it was probably about 2004, and I started to get a bit itchy feet, and I started in my corporate life in 1988.
Yeah.
I was only 6 at the time.
Of course you
and and it was just one of those things where I'd been doing such a lot for a lot of other people. I thought it was time that I should do things for myself.
Yeah.
And I was lucky to work with a lady who is now one of my best friends, and she sort of taught me a lot of the ropes and showed me sort of some of the behind the scenes, because being good at talking to people on the phone is not necessarily the whole square of running a business.
No.
So it really just gave me a bit of confidence to go out on my own. And I did a franchise before I started my own telemarketing outbound agency, which was like a baptism of fire, let me tell you. But when you look back since sort of 1988, we've estimated that I've possibly made and spoken to more than 2 million people.
Wow.
Which is, and that's a conservative estimate.
Yeah.
Because we didn't sort of factor in that sometimes we'd be doing 150 dials a day.
Yeah.
That means that you don't speak to 150 people.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2 million calls. One campaign, I think we drove £32 billion worth of potential revenue in a sort of 15 month period. So yeah, I wouldn't like to think of the amount of money that we've brought to the table through my own sort of activities and my team's activities over the years, but certainly over the last sort of 12, it's just been me.
Yeah. And how different was it working for yourself as opposed to working for a corporate?
Goodness. I would say that a lot of the structure goes. It's like the rug is pulled from under your feet, and you're suddenly thinking, "Oh, you're in this mindset of 9 to 5, and you've got to do certain things at certain times throughout the day to get things done, and then you realise that you've got to keep track of your accounts, and there's possibly social media, or there's marketing that you've got to do. So all of these different hats start to sort of crowd in on your day, and you realise there's expertise that you haven't got. So it can be a real eye-opener. So I would always say, if you're going to start out, make sure you've got some really good people that really know what they're doing with the things that you need support on. Because that's going to be crucial.
Yeah.
Really has been crucial.
Yeah. So tell me about your business now. What do you do now, Wendy?
So now, majority of my time is spent actually managing LinkedIn company pages for clients. So I curate content, and I manage their growth of audiences, and just really sort of make sure that the right people are seeing the right information for when the timing is right.
Yeah.
So I'm using really a lot of the sort of telemarketing and telesales skills that I've got, and the tool of LinkedIn to amplify new business and opportunity, to start conversations in the messaging section there, to ultimately have a real life conversation.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my mainstay, and I teach that to people as well, you know, so that, because I ultimately want people to be self-sufficient, you know, even if you at least know how it all works
Yeah.
and what should be done, then at the end of that process, if you've not the time or the inclination, you should at least have the trust that somebody like me can actually then manage it for you.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we come from.
And why LinkedIn, Wendy? What was it that attracted you to that platform in particular?
I was introduced to LinkedIn when I was in a recruitment role, when LinkedIn very first came out. So it was a CV and it was a job hunter kind of
Yeah.
platform. So I've been one of the first users since forever, and just learning to use it, using it from a sort of, when you're telemarketing, you're looking to qualify the right person. So of course people were putting up that they had this, you know, they were at this company and they had this job, and I was going, you're exactly who I need. So I was using it as a research tool, and an opportunity to sort of connect with people, to sort of soften and warm up that initial conversation, and saying, look, well, you'll have looked at my profile and seen who I am and what I do, you know, and what I'm selling. So for you to accept is kind of like a little nod to say, I'm in the market, or I'm open to what it is that you may have to offer,
Yeah.
even if it's not right now, at some point.
Yeah.
So that was why I love LinkedIn. I love the way that it's developed into its own sort of social business platform. There's so much that it can do to sort of elevate yourself. I
Yeah.
kind of think that if you didn't have it, where would we be? Because there's no yellow pages now.
No, that's right. So how has LinkedIn changed over the time that you've been using it?
I think you see much more personality.
Yeah.
You know, and people will say, oh, it's much more like Facebook. But I have to say that at least once a month, we always do a human story for our clients, because yes, you want to educate people and you want your branding to be consistent and people to recognise, you know, the logo and, you know, what it is that you do. But ultimately, people want to feel like they know you
Yeah.
before they speak to you. So I think that's really where it's changed. It's not just a, oh, look, these are the skill sets that I've got. You know, I can use a computer and I can use Microsoft. It's much more than that now. You know, it's sort of got a 360 human feel to it.
Yeah. How did you get your title Chief Conversation Officer?
Oh, that was one that was made up for me by, I interviewed a guy called Blaine Olkers, um, who was a chief something officer, and I thought that was really cool. And I'd already been given the title of Queen of Making Conversation
Yeah.
over on Twitter. You know, when it was Twitter, you know, that
Yeah.
platform that they still say, you know, on X,
Yes,
formerly known as
yes.
Twitter. Then you go, how long has it been Twitter now? You know, not been Twitter now for them to still say formerly. So it just kind of led into that kind of playfulness, really, that I like to bring, because if you're at work all day and you've got to speak to people, you want to kind of be yourself, bring your personality and have a little bit of fun.
Yeah. So who are your clients, Wendy? Who is it that you're helping?
Well, at the moment, it's far reaching from what my skill set is, which is really interesting. I'm currently working for a local garage that do servicing and repairs, and that's great because the education of that is most people have got cars that
Yeah.
need fixing, or an MOT or a service. So that's really interesting. And then there's another company that do roofing across the sort of Glasgow Central Belt region. And that's interesting because they're looking not just to connect with residential, because they do that over on Facebook, but they're looking to collaborate with architects and quantity surveyors and this sort of thing. So that's been really successful for them, because I'm finding that the sort of more what I would call ordinary services that you would rely on aren't necessarily using LinkedIn, because they think they should be using Facebook. So
Yeah.
they can cut through a lot of the noise as well, which is great. I've got a vehicle removal guy who comes and just tows your truck away when you break down, because we found that there was like nobody in Scotland doing that.
Wow.
There are companies in Scotland
Yes.
that are on LinkedIn that do it, but don't say that they do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really bizarre. And of course, LinkedIn for me, moving to Scotland just over 3 years ago, has been the resource for me to build my new network,
Yeah.
leaving my old network behind, bringing the LinkedIn Local to life 2.5 years ago in Ayrshire, was my way of being able to bring my online connections into the real world and get to know people. And that's really where the network has come about, with Ayrshire, with Glasgow, with Edinburgh. So there's 3 meetings. We've got an online community. And it's just, if you'd have said you're moving to Scotland to run a network, I'd have probably just laughed at you.
So tell
It's
me a
the
bit more
last
about
thing.
about LinkedIn Local. Was that something that you were involved in before you moved to Scotland?
Only in as much as that pre-COVID, there was a LinkedIn Local Lichfield, which is where I was from, that had been running, and that was sort of one of those where you paid to go and they would educate you on how to use LinkedIn,
Yeah.
which was great for a lot of the attendees. Although I was sitting there going, no, that's not quite right. And it really didn't kind of fit for me as a networking, because I knew what about LinkedIn, but it was a great way to bring people together. So the concept is a LinkedIn IP. It's something that they sort of started about 7 or 8 years ago now. And I just thought, so I did a little bit of research. There'd been one in Glasgow, but a very long time ago, that was very successful. And I thought, well, people may remember it. We can perhaps bring it back together. And it's been really successful in as much as that people like the format of the actual networking event.
Yeah.
Because I just bring something a little bit different by using their LinkedIn headlines as a way of them introducing themselves to everybody in the room.
Yeah. So tell me about a meeting then. What happens when people come to LinkedIn Local?
We have open networking for half an hour, which allows everybody to get settled and to get, hydrated, shall we say. And often I will put people together that don't know one another. I'll have looked at the guest list already and say, make sure, and I've got a few, what I would call them ambassadors, but they wouldn't like to take on a title, but the regulars, if you like. And I'll say, Jonathan, can you just go and take Emily over and meet John over there, because I think they would have a great conversation. So we do that to start with, and then we have our headline introductions, which is literally reading off the text that you put underneath your name on your profile. And it's really interesting, because a lot of the people that come for the first time, you can see them as you're going around the room, they're frantically retyping their headline, because I go round to make sure that they stick to the rules.
Yeah.
Because quite a few people will have, I'm Daniel Maguire, and I'm a mechanic at RDS Auto Care. There's a plug for a client, but and yet now that says not a mechanic, just grew up around engines, now getting dirty even as a boss. The cars crack and customer care. So it's kind of a tangible takeaway for everybody, that they realise that the digital impression that they're giving when they read that out in real life
Yeah.
to people that they don't know is the first impression that they're giving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is really interesting. And of course, after that, we have what I would call mingle. And I just say, right, now that you know who everybody is, I want, we're going to play musical chairs without taking one away. Go find the people that you want to talk to. And then we have a humble brag section where we'll say, right, I want to hear about your successes this month. What have you been working on? Have you got an anniversary? Have you got a new starter? Have you got a new product? Have you been given an award? Anything at all. And then that goes into the newsletter to sort of just give people a little bit more visibility.
Yeah. So who do you find comes to the meetings? Is it really varied?
Yes, I mean we've got sort of what I would call white collar service companies, that are sort of national, that send their local sort of BDMs, if you like, or down to the solopreneurs who, perhaps really niche in something. And what I've found is, over the last sort of 2.5 years of doing this, building the online community in the last sort of when did we launch it? September, October time last year. We've now got a sort of 8-part programme where we can build, if you want a digital product to showcase your business, we have got 8 experts that can do 8 webinars to show you how to actually put it together
Yeah.
and build it. So that's like 8 hours of learning from experts in the community.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant, because at the end of it, the intention is that people will have created a digital product, set an intention to present that within the community so that we can, give feedback and support for them to go out into the real world. And I'm calling it go from free to fee, where you can show people what you do,
Yeah.
and then people go, oh, I need a session,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Fantastic.
is just amazing. Yeah.
So how popular are your meetings? How many businesses do you tend to get in the room?
It varies. Edinburgh, 6th of January, second day back, I have to say was not probably the best idea because we had snow and we had all sorts of travel disruption. So we had six people there. But I have to say that was a real quality couple of hours spent really getting to know the people that were there. We launched Glasgow last March with 82 people, and I couldn't tell you everybody's name afterwards. So it's been very extreme, but generally we settle around about 40 mark, which is really nice. And there's always new people.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah.
People dip in and out. Some people come all the time, and it's just great that it's sort of organically grown, as much from my own effort of connecting with people on LinkedIn and encouraging them to come along, that people are telling other people and saying, you need to come along because this is great,
So why is networking so important for small businesses?
Because it's the quickest way that you can, I think, it's that know, like and trust, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's your first impression? Do I like you? Will I have a second coffee with you? Test. You can just get the measure of somebody, and I always say having the right people in the room for the right reason means that the timing will look after itself, as will the results, which is kind of the 4R formula that I teach. So it's the best way of getting yourself out there. And I think if you're going to have a digital impression, that digital impression has to match when you meet somebody in real life.
Yeah.
So it can really reinforce that kind of brand and your personality and the kind of business people you want to be with.
Yeah. So what kind of networking mistakes do you see people making?
Just handing out business cards, or going and solely wanting to talk to the one person and almost cornering them so that person can't get away and talk to anybody else. And I think it's kind of one of those things that, it takes time to get to know somebody. So I say don't ask for their hand in marriage on the first date, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing, is that there are expectations that you could be sent by a boss in a past role, and you get back to the office and they say, did you get any business? It's a little bit ambitious.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
So have you got any good tips for people who maybe haven't tried networking before?
I can only relate this back to the 2 million calls that I've made. And that is to say that in the 2 million calls that I've made to the right people, looking after the, whatever it is that I'm looking to offer them, only ever twice has that person said to me, oh, you're exactly what I'm looking for today.
Yeah.
So I think if you can relate that to not just, the calls that you're making, that the timing is never going to be today, to when you go networking, that you're going to be getting to know that person. They're going to be wanting to get the measure of you. And depending on what it is that you're selling, people are going to be cautious, certainly if they're going to be spending a considerable amount of money.
Yeah.
So just think about how you would approach that yourself in buying something, and wear their shoes, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good advice. So tell me a bit more about how you help people. I think you do one-to-ones, but you also do your online courses.
Yes, I do one-to-ones, which always what they want and never what they know they need, if that makes sense. Because communication is one of those things where you need to sort of step back and have somebody else's eyes on it. So a lot of the one-to-one work that I do is about how you're showing up and really looking at how that's being received so that you can tweak that. It's really sort of what your business plan is, how much you want to earn, reverse engineering that so that you know how many of things you need to be selling, so that you know how many conversations you need to have, because you'll know how many conversations lead to a customer.
Yeah.
So we sort of look after that and then say, right, so now you will look at, when you're speaking to somebody, what it is that you're saying and the process that you're taking them down, so that they're, as much as you have having the confidence to say, would you like this now, but also for the other person, the client, to turn around and say, I know this is what I need.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I do in the one-to-one stuff. And the online course is sort of split into sales, marketing, and LinkedIn. So it's about understanding your sales, understanding your marketing, which are different but meet in the middle, and then using LinkedIn as the tool to apply the strategy.
Yeah. So I've got one final question, Wendy. I think it's got a very obvious answer. The best place to find you, I'm guessing it's going to be LinkedIn.
It certainly is. Yes, I'm usually if logged in there most days. So yes, always happy to connect with somebody and answer any advice. In my contact info on LinkedIn, there's a 15-minute, if you just want to have a natter, if you've got a question. There's like we've talked about quite a lot in this short 20 minutes. You can get quite a lot done. Just in helping somebody in that time. So I'm happy to do that.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much for being my guest today, Wendy.
Oh, thank you so much, Liz. I've really enjoyed it.